Hi guys, it is Aoife from Fred Weasley Died Laughing, and I'm here to do my second January weekly wrap up of 2016. So this week I had a pretty good reading week. I have read 4 books and 2 novellas, and the first ones that I finished were the 2 novellas, and it was In Time and Sparks Rise by Alexandra Bracken. These are 2 novellas from the Darkest Minds trilogy, which is about a girl called Ruby who lives in this dystopian world where children have gained these weird powers, and the children are kind of locked away by the government in these terrible camps, and the Darkest Minds tells how Ruby escapes these camps and finds other children like her, and she learns how to use her powers and control her powers for good. So the first book, In Time, kind of is 1.5 in the series. It tells the story of a particular character after the events of the first book, The Darkest Minds. And I really enjoyed coming back and reading about this character, as we didn't really see much of her in the second book, Never Fade. So I was happy to go and see that she was doing pretty much okay. And there was just so much heartbreak and feeling in this short book, and I just really loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I can't say too much about it as it would spoil what happened in the first book, and what character it is about as well. But I really enjoyed it. If anyone has read this novella, you know what I'm talking about when I say it was just heartbreaking, and I just can't wait for the third book to see what happens with these characters. I just really want to know. And the second novella was Sparks Rise, and this is 2.5 in the series, and it tells the story about a girl in the camp that Ruby was in when she was in the start of the Darkest Minds, and it's an old friend of hers, and it kind of follows her story in the camp and how she's doing in the camp and how some things are changing. And there's more children coming in with these powers that we don't know too much about, as there hasn't been a lot of mention about these particular kind of powers in the 2 books. We don't know too much about these kind of children. But I really enjoyed it. It kind of was a nice look at some things that were discussed in Never Fade. And again, I think it was a nice lead up into what's going to happen in the afterlife. And again, there were characters in this novella that I'm really looking forward to seeing if they appear in the afterlife. We can see what happened to them. I didn't enjoy it quite as much as the first one, as the characters, I just wasn't as attached to them, because we only got a very brief look at them in the Darkest Minds. So when it came to me reading this novella, it took me a few minutes to realise who Sam was, because I couldn't remember her. But then gradually I got into it and I ended up enjoying it, so I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The first full book that I finished this week was The Sin Eater's Daughter by Melinda Salisbury. I just love this cover. Look at this cover, it's absolutely perfect. Unfortunately, this book ended up being a bit of a letdown for me. I was just expecting a lot more from it. It tells a story about a girl called Twyla who has been brought into the royal kingdom, into the castle. And she's been living in this castle since she was quite young, and she's been told by the queen that she is the goddess's daughter embodied, which means she is able to drink this poison and not die. But because she drinks this poison, she ends up kind of being poisonous, I guess. If she touches people with her bare skin, they drop down dead, they're poisoned. So she can't touch anyone, and she's always afraid of touching people in case she ends up killing them by accident. And she's kind of used as an assassin by the queen. If there's traitors, she will send in Twyla to go and kill the people while they're kind of tied up in a chair. She'll go in and make Twyla touch them to kill them, which is particularly evil. So the concept of it is really interesting. I just found the book to be a little bit boring. It just wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be. Twyla was a bit of a bland character for me. She just did a lot of moping about the castle. She didn't really do much. It was just kind of a lot of talk and no action, and it kind of just bored me. I did enjoy the world building, kind of the history about the land and the history about the kingdom and the other kingdoms. I enjoyed that quite a bit, and I also enjoyed the concept of a sin eater, which is obviously the name of the book, and Twyla was the sin eater's daughter. And a sin eater is someone who literally eats the sins of someone who has died. So in this world, when someone dies, their family has to lay out this kind of feast on top of their coffin, and the particular foods signify the sins they have committed during their life, and the sin eater has to come in and eat all of the food, and when all the food is eaten and all the sins have been consumed, it means that the person's soul is sin free, and then they can go up to the heaven and be kind of free of their sins. And I really love that concept. I thought it was really, really unique, really original, and I really, really enjoyed every time Twilight talked about it. But that was kind of really the only thing I enjoyed about the book. Her relationship with her guard Leaf, which is kind of, he is on the back of the book in the blurb. He kind of comes in and kind of changes her mind about certain things, makes her kind of start thinking about her life and things she's been told, and how maybe not everything she has been told is the truth. And he was interesting, but I just felt his relationship with Twyla went very fast and was very forced, and it was just a bit like, I just wasn't really buying it, to be honest. The whole book was just too dull, I think. I will read the second book. I won't buy the second book, but I will read it because it follows different characters, so I think that it might be a little bit more interesting in this one. But yeah, I don't know, it was just a bit meh, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I've been wanting to reread for a really, really long time, and it was The Moonriders by Teresa Tomlinson. This is a book I first read when I was about 13, and I absolutely loved it, and I've never been able to stop thinking about it, so I finally got to read it. This is about a girl called Myrina who lives near Troy just before the Trojan War, and it is when Myrina is 13 and she gets enlisted into this kind of special order of priestesses called the Moonriders, and they're kind of warrior priestesses, and they're really, really interesting. They kind of travel around this land, and they do ritual dances for different tribes, and they kind of worship this earth mother kind of goddess. Kind of, her name is Ma, and she's kind of like a goddess of the earth, and what they do is they dance for these tribes to kind of bring a healthy harvest or bring a healthy fishing season and stuff like that, and to bring fertility to the land and to the people and stuff like that. And it's really, really interesting, and it's about Myrina kind of joining these warrior priestesses, learning how to be this kind of priestess, and she really, really grows as a character as we first meet her when she's 13, and it kind of follows her all the way up to when the War of Troy is almost finished, up when she's about 22-23 years old, and Myrina kind of gets dragged into the Battle of Troy, and she kind of becomes this kind of leader that the people know, and she kind of looks after people while this siege of Troy is going on. There is just so much character development in this book, and Myrina really, really grows as like a young girl into a young leader and a really, really confident, outspoken person, and someone who's able to kind of lead people and do the right thing even if it's the hard thing to do. And I really enjoy just reading about her decisions and all the things she has to go through, and I really, really like it. And this book is kind of the epitome of female friendship. There are very, very few male characters in this book. It is a very female character driven book. As obviously all the Moonriders are women, they are all extremely independent, powerful women. The tribe that Myrina comes from, it's actually the women that choose their husbands. It's not the husbands that choose. It's not the men that choose their wives, and I really, really love that. There's just so much female power in this book, I think, and I just really love it. I really enjoyed it. You're kind of like, no, you go girl, like every time they do something cool where the men are kind of shocked at what they're doing. But I gave it 4.5 stars. I didn't give it 5 stars as I just wasn't as gripped as I remember being when I first read it. But I still really, really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed just following Myrina again and learning about the Moonriders again. And yes, so 4.5 stars. And then I went on and I read Voyage of the Snake Lady, which is the sequel to the Moonriders. This is just kind of tells where Myrina has gone in her life about 7 to 8 years after the events of Troy, so after the end of the Moonriders, and it is just about kind of some more troubles that she's ended up in, kind of stuff she has to fight her way out of. I don't think this book is as completely necessary as a sequel. Like, it was just kind of like, I think people would be okay just reading the Moonriders. This isn't a necessary sequel to read. I think if people liked the character of Myrina, they would enjoy this book, as, you know, it's kind of very much about stuff she is learning about herself and kind of decisions and journeys she is making for herself, rather than being a really action driven book. It's just more about Marina, I think. So I did enjoy it because I liked Marina, but I only gave it 4 out of 5 stars, as I do think parts of it were a little bit boring. The next book I read was Somewhere Only We Know by Erin Lawless. This is a book I got from NetGalley, and it completely surprised me, as I just absolutely loved it, and I wasn't expecting it to love it so much. And it just tells the story of a man called Alex who works in the immigrations department in the UK government, and he ends up coming across this application for a visa by this girl called Nadia, who's been living in the UK since she was quite a young girl, and she is on the verge of being deported, and she's kind of looking for a visa so she could stay in the UK and be with her friends. And there's something about this girl and the character reference letters that her friends have written for her that kind of just sticks in Alex's mind, and he just really likes the sound of her. And by a twist of fate, a week later he ends up meeting her and her friends in this pub, and he kind of strikes up a friendship with her. And they just get on really, really well, and he's kind of an introvert. He doesn't really have many friends, he doesn't really do that much stuff, and Nadia kind of takes him under her wing, and she decides to kind of bring a bit of sparkle into his life, and they go on all these crazy adventures around London and start getting to know each other. It reminded me a little bit of Attachments by Rainbow Rowell, just the whole Alex kind of getting to know Nadia before he actually met her through this kind of correspondence letter, I guess. But he does have that really cuteness that Lincoln in Attachments have, where he's a bit of an introvert. He doesn't really go out and socialise a lot, but he has that kind of nerdy cuteness to him, and he's quite a good looking guy, as we know from Nadia's point of view. And Nadia herself was a really, really lovely character. She was very kind, she was really driven. She wasn't someone that kind of moped around about her situation. She didn't complain too much about it. She went out, and even though she couldn't work, she went out and worked in a charity shop so she could have something to do. And it was kind of a real admirable trait in a character, so I really, really enjoyed it. I just really loved the love story. It was just so cute. It was just literally kept me hooked. I couldn't put it down the whole night that I was reading it, so I read it in more or less one sitting, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The last book I read this week, which I actually haven't finished yet, I'm 80% through it at the moment and I'll probably finish it tonight, is The Vintage Cinema Club by Jane Linfoot. This is another book I got off NetGalley, but unfortunately I'm not liking this one as much as I liked Somewhere Only We Know. This is about 2 girls. 2 of them are quite young, they're in their 20s, and another one is in her middle 40s or late 40s, I think. And it is how they all have set up this shop in this vintage cinema, or this old cinema building, and they run a vintage shop. So they go around and get vintage goods, vintage clothes, vintage bridal gowns. But their shop is in danger of closing, as one of the woman's husbands, who isn't a really nice guy, owns the building and he's put it up for sale. So it kind of tells a story about these different girls. They're all going through these different problems. There was just, I don't know, this book just isn't, it's just not really good. Like, I think I'm just not into the characters. I just don't feel particularly like close to any of them. It's mostly centered around this one woman called Izzy and her relationship with a guy she meets called Alexander. Once or twice a chapter, and there's a lot of chapters, once or twice a chapter she ends up mentioning her broken family home and how her dad left her mom when he was younger, and how he was a complete, like, you know, asshole and left her family with nothing. And at first that was okay. We get this kind of backstory about why Izzy feels the way she does about relationships and about men, but it's just mentioned so many times. I literally am internally screaming every time she mentions it because it is so irritating. So at the moment it's going to be a 3 out of 5 stars, a low 3 out of 5 stars. So unless something spectacular happens, it's going to be a 3 out of 5 stars, as I'm just a bit meh about it. I'm just not enjoying it that much. So that is everything I read this week. I feel like I've been talking forever. Please let me know what you guys read this week, and I will see you guys again next time. So bye!